Hello, everyone. This is Chapter 8 Gestalt Therapy for Counseling 4500. Introduction: Existential, phenomenological, and process based approach. So, right there, existential is talking about, let's say, the purpose of life or the meaning of life. Phenomenological means coming from a specific person's perspective, and process based approach. And process based basically focuses on, going from the beginning to the end, as opposed to just the final product, and that's it, right? It's like, how do you experience the entire process of, let's say, counseling? All right, individuals must be understood in the context of their ongoing relationships with their environment. So it also talks about, the context that you're in, where you are, and how that also affects you. Awareness, choice, and responsibility are the foundation of the Gestalt approach. So awareness, choice, and responsibility are very much existentialist, right? So we're talking about being aware of what's going on in the world around us and about ourselves, and then the choices that we make. And that means either to do something or to not to do something. They're both choices, right? And so if those are both choices, then you need to take responsibility that you chose one or the other. And maybe this is the reason why you're not feeling so great or happy, but you let's say, want to change because you're going to therapy. People are always in the process of becoming, remaking, and rediscovering themselves. Focus is on the here and now, and the what and how, and also the I thou of relating. And we talked about I thou also in existentialism, where we're talking about finding more deeper relationships with people in a way that you speak to other people like humans, as opposed to, let's say, things that provide you something. Let's say, for example, I think in class we've talked about the fact that, when I go to get coffee, the person who is giving me the coffee is kind of more of an it than a thou, because I just need coffee today or right now. So that's all they are to me. And again, it's totally fine, but we want to find ourselves to be more enriched with people that we respect and we want to be much more deeper with when it comes to experiences and conversations. All right, relational Gestalt therapy is what's also known as the contemporary version of Gestalt therapy. It stresses dialogue and relationships between client and the therapist. More support and increased sensitivity and compassion in therapy than Fritz Perls. Fritz Perls is the father of Gestalt therapy. And we know that he is quite confrontational, so it's going to be a little bit less confrontational in the relational Gestalt therapy. Supportive, accepting, empathetic, respectful, dialogical, and challenging. So again, still very similar to before, but we want to emphasize these things so that we don't discourage a client and stuff like that. All right, focuses on the process than the content, as we said before, and experiments designed to increase clients' awareness of what they are doing and how they are doing it. It is lively and promotes direct experiencing rather than abstract talking. If you think about the other previous therapies and other therapies that you'll encounter in the future, a lot of it's talk, right? And so with Gestalt, he's saying, no, you need to start doing all those things. Stop just talking about it and actually do it, right? So yeah. All right, now let's talk about the key concepts of and view of human nature. It is paternalistic, so that's coming from a male-dominated perspective. Clients have to grow up, stand on their own 2 feet, and deal with their life problems themselves. Sounds like a father, right? The cliched father. There's 2 agendas. Number 1 is to move the client from environmental supports to self-support. So instead of asking other people for help for everything, instead they're going to depend on themselves. And of course, that's going to be a learning process, right? And the process part that we talked about is so important here. 2 is reintegrating the disowned parts of one's personality. So you can sort of kind of think of this as what Freud would call like the ego defense mechanisms, where you're trying to protect yourself from things that are maybe stressful. So here we're talking about is let's deal with it, right? Let's reintegrate these disowned parts of our personality that we've been avoiding. Master of intentionally frustrating clients to enhance their awareness. And if you've ever seen a video of Fritz Perl doing it, you can sort of see that in a little bit, right? It's a little confrontational. It's kind of funny the first time you watch it because you're like, whoa. But there is a method to his madness, as the quote says. He knows what he's doing. He has a specific reason for doing it. Monitor the quality of contact with the external world, other people, and internal worlds where are part of the self that are disowned. We unify the disowned parts to help with the personal growth. So you need to be a whole to be able to then be a whole, as in like a whole person, WHOLE, so that you can grow as a person. Awareness will give meaning to life. So again, very existential there. Like, you have to be aware of what's going on to really appreciate it. If you're living a life where everything is kind of like not what you're thinking or you understand, it's going to be a little bit harder to grow. There's also this thing called the paradoxical theory of change by Arnie Besser. And that is, and let me read it to you. I'll probably read it to you at least twice so that you can sort of understand what it's saying. Authentic change occurs more from being who we are than from trying to be who we are not. Let me just say it one more time. Authentic change occurs more from being who we are than from trying to be who we are not. So what that means is potentially, let's say, influences around us, right? We want to say, when you grow up, you want to be like this person or like that person. Maybe you, sorry, have a hero that you admire. So what they're saying is you need to be yourself and not necessarily that other person. Although obviously you can be influenced by them, but overall, you would want to try to be yourself. Important to clients as being as fully as possible in their current condition. Here are some principles of Gestalt therapy. Holism, which we just talked about really quickly, kind of like the whole person, not just part of us. Field theory, figure formation process, and the organismic self-regulation. And we'll go through each of these in the next following slides. Holism. Gestalt is a German word for whole or completion. Again, whole as in WHOLE, okay, like the whole person. Do not place superficial value on a particular aspect of the person. Pays attention to their thoughts, their feelings, their behaviors, their body, their memories, and their dreams. There's a figure, which is the most salient of any moment. The figure salient is the most important thing right now. So the figure is the most important thing at this moment. And the ground is what is out of the client's awareness. Okay. There are clues. There are physical gestures. There's the tone of voice, the demeanor, which is kind of like how you give up, what your vibe is. Okay. And then nonverbal content. Field theory is the organism must be seen in its environment or context. So the person needs to be seen in their natural habitat. This is a constantly changing field. Okay, so even though it is this person's typical habitat, that can also change as well. Everything is relational, in flux, interrelated, and in process. So that means that we're constantly changing and moving, right? But we need to understand it within the context of that person's life. Figure formation process is how the person organizes experience from moment to moment, tracks how some aspects of the environmental field emerges from the background and becomes a focal point of the person's attention and interest. So what that is saying is that we have so many things happening in our lives. And so we put things back and forth, we put certain things to the side and deal with it later. So that those things keep on happening in our lives. So we need to be able to understand that certain things will pop up, certain things will recede, and all that stuff. Organismic self-evaluation is the mixes with the figure formation process, which is what we were talking about before. Equilibrium is kind of like balance. It's disturbed by the emergence of a need, a sensation, or an interest. So typically we want to be balanced out, right? Kind of stable. But sometimes things will make it so that it's unstable or disturbed. So in that sense now, we're going to try and see how we can fix it and bring it back. And pretty much what that's saying is dealing with your problems that you have so that you can come back to your stable self. Each person can take actions that will restore equilibrium. When things move from the background to our awareness, figure formation process guides to the next step. The now. So that is present time, right now. Learning to appreciate and fully experience the present moment And the reason why that happens is oftentimes we kind of live in the future or in our past. We think about the things that have traumatized us and we kind of let that take over, right? We're not necessarily living today. We're too obsessed or worried or thinking about the past, or maybe we're future oriented where we're just worried about like what's going to happen in the future as opposed to appreciating what's going on right now. What makes us alive, basically, right? Or we are alive right now. We don't know what can happen in the future, and the past has already happened, so there's nothing that you can do about that specifically except for deal with it. All right, power is in the present. Lots of energy is used to complain about the past and talking about the future. The power of the present gets lost. Phenomenological inquiry means paying attention to what is occurring around us now. How does it make us feel? What is it making us thinking? What is happening right now? And of course, you can always ask these questions. Ask what and how questions and avoid why questions. So, what is happening right now? What is going on right now? What is the awareness at this moment? How are you experiencing your fear? How are you experiencing, I'm sorry, your fear? Sorry, that was double. How are you attempting to withdraw from this moment? Most people stay in the present only for a very short amount of time. Instead of talking about feelings, you become detached, become aware of the present experience. Here's an example. Josephine talks about sadness, pain, and confusion. A Gestalt therapist might invite her to experience her sadness and pain and confusion right now. The therapist will gauge how much anxiety or discomfort is present and chooses a technique that is according to that. So let's say the person says they're sad and they're like, well, I'm just sad, right? Well, that doesn't sound very deep or very important right now. But if you are really feeling it and you're, let's say, crying or you can't talk, then we understand, because sometimes we don't understand how to gauge the intensity. And the Gestalt is asking you to act out these things. So then you get to see it, witness it. And then you, as well as your client, both realize those things. If clients talk about the past, the therapist will ask them to reenact the experience right now. So for example, instead of talking about childhood trauma with the father, the client becomes a child and talks to imaginary father in their room or talks to an empty chair. Pretty deep, I think. All right, unfinished business. When figures emerge from the background but are not completed and resolved, this is when we talk about unfinished business, right? This becomes resentment, rage, hatred, pain, anxiety, grief, guilt, and abandonment. Yeah, have you ever thought about something that happened in the past and then one of these feelings, these emotions come from you or emerge from you? So then, yeah, definitely that can make sense, right? This blockage manifests physically and also clutters the person's present-centered awareness. And incomplete directions does not seek completion. Impasse is the fancy word here for stuck point. External support is not available. So this is the reason why is you don't have that. So then you become stuck here. Provide the clients with situations that encourage them to fully experience this impasse. So again, acting these things out, talking about it, but then doing something about it, like kind of like both when it comes to those techniques, which we'll learn about in a little bit. All right, if they can accept themselves in all the trouble, that they begin to think about it differently. Okay, so if they can accept all about themselves, all the troubles that exist, they begin to think differently. Contact and resistance is contact. So contact is the term here to use for seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, and moving. So interacting with nature and with other people without losing oneself of individuality. The clients need to have a clear awareness, full energy, and the ability to express oneself. Resistance is created to cope with life situations, good and bad. So sometimes, again, you don't want to do something because you're trying to protect yourself. It could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. There are 5 parts or 5 types of resistance. They're called contact boundary phenomena. Number 1 is introjection. Number 2 is projection. Number 3 is retroflexion. 4 is deflection. And 5 is confluence, which we'll define in the next slide. All right, introjection is the tendency to uncritically accept others' beliefs and standards without assimilating them to make them congruent with who we are. So here we just kind of go along with what other people are saying. We don't question it or anything like that. We'll just go with it. Even if we disagree with it, we're going to go with it. Projection is we disown certain aspects of ourselves by assigning them to the environment. So that is shifting it from us to other people. So you're projecting onto other people. Retroflexion is turning out back onto ourselves what we would like to do to someone else, or to do or doing to ourselves what we would like someone else to do for us. So that might mean inhibit themselves from taking action out of fear, of embarrassment, guilt, or resentment, or like something like self-cutting, right? So you can see that it's turning it into the other person in a specific way, what we want to do for ourselves. Deflection is distraction or veering off so that we do not have to maintain contact. So deflection is kind of like a shield, and the shield is going to protect whatever comes at it, it'll bounce out, right? So that's an overuse of humor, abstract generalizations, questions instead of statements. So we're asking questions of saying certain things. Confluence is blurring the differentiation between the self and the environment. So that means absence of conflict. So you're not going to have any type of uncomfortable things in your life. Slowness to anger, belief that all parties experience the same feelings, thoughts that we do. So it's kind of like, this is just how life is. That's it. Kind of not necessarily very enthusiastic. All right. Now let's talk about energy and blocks to energy. Attention to where energy is located and how it is used, how it can be blocked. Block energy can manifest as tension in the body. So sometimes it's very physical, right? It sounds like, where basically you can sort of see what's going on, because block energy can manifest as tension in the body through posture. That's how you, let's say, sit or stand, how tight your body is, not breathing deeply, avoiding eye contact, choking off sensation, numbing feelings, and restricted tone. So this is the end of part 1.